Spring Split champions!
3 rookies prove themselves worthy of the top 4 in the EU LCS. A double kill from Perks! This guy is a madman! He can do it! Oh, Memento! You beautiful man!
Guess the Quadra gonna be a pacer for Kobe!
It's time to find out who will rise. This is the EU LCS. Summer split going into today. Fnatic is still the clear favorite in the fight for first, but on the last scheduled day of the regular season, anything can happen. I'm Sjokz supporter, joined by Andrew Vedius and then Foxdrop. Wyatt, anything can happen would also be an appropriate slogan for the day.
Such a good hashtag.
Yeah.
Wish we thought of it earlier, Sjokz. But it's going to be a great final day of the regular season. We have a lot of exciting games. We have some games that don't mean a huge amount, but you know what that means. Trolling. So many fun champions. We get to see so many creative stuff.
Timo,
I'm
yes,
looking
Is that your
forward.
guess for
Okay.
what we're going to see today?
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Maybe
right.
we get to see some cool stuff.
Well, yesterday the top teams fought tooth and nail to strengthen their positions. Vedius, walk us through the headlines.
More than happy to,
No,
Sjokz.
actually, no, I want to do it. I want to take it.
All right, last day, you can do it.
I'm perfectly equipped to do it.
What's
First
this?
up, Schalke 04. They secured a crucial comeback win against Splice on the back of their 80 carry upset. Now, Schalke came into the week knowing that they had to get a 2-0 to stay in the fight for first and in the fight for the top 2 as well. But things didn't go too well. They got kind of smacked around by Niski and Kobe from Splice's side, but when push came to shove, their superstar 80 carry upset on his signature Ezreal. He picked up all the kills in the needed team fights, and in the end, Schalke pulled out the win. Next highlight from yesterday has to be Fnatic. Fnatic, who is in the fight for first, and Caps was on LeBlanc. And you know what that means. Great play is all over, and sometimes a bit overzealous or over-anxious play, because Caps loves to be aggressive. As you can see right here, he jumps in, he has no fear, and picks off the enemy, and sometimes he goes just a little bit too far, which made this game versus Rocket dicier than Fnatic may have hoped. But in the end, they won, and they are in a great position to secure their first place. Now, finally, yesterday, Vitality's young guns, Attila and Jack Troll, they completely destroyed Misfits in our match of the week. To add insult to injury, Attila picked Draven versus Hansama and completely decimated his lane and consequently the game. He completely sent Misfits home, and with that, kept the hopes for a bye for Vitality alive and kicking. A lot of very interesting results mean that today there is a lot left to be decided. As we said already, the fight for first and Fnatic looks to be pretty much done, though. If they win versus the Unicorns of Love, they already lock in first.
Yeah, based off of yesterday's results, we're kind of seeing a pretty clear picture, but that battle for the bye is still a big one. We still see fights for third, fourth as well. Could be very close. And hey, if Fnatic get upset, you never know what could happen.
That second place is ridiculously important as well. It cannot be overstated. Yes, you're not first, but it still means you get that bye into Madrid, which is absolutely huge as far as getting a deep playoff run is concerned.
And possibly also getting to the finals. As said already, it is in Fnatic's hands to secure first. If they beat the Unicorns of Love, they do that, but there's another way in which they can lock the first place.
You're right, Sjokz. If Fnatic Fnatic can already lock first place if Schalke 04 beats H2K earlier today. The reason for this is the head-to-head record between Schalke and Fnatic is in favor of Fnatic. So if Fnatic, Schalke, and G2 are tied at the end of the day, they will be put in a table to decide their seeding based on their head-to-head record. And due to the fact that Fnatic is 2-0 up over Schalke so far this split, they would be at the top, Schalke would be at the bottom, and then G2 would be happy in the middle.
Yeah. Really lengthy explanation. We will, of course, keep you updated on the deets and how things evolve.
Yeah, and after the games today, there may be some cheeky little tiebreakers as well, which can be exciting. If there are 1 or 2 tiebreaker games, we'll play those after the broadcast today. But if there's any more...
Still on broadcast,
On
though.
broadcast, yes, of course. Yes, you'll still get to see the game. They'll be after these scheduled broadcasts, shall I say. But if there's any more than 2, then we'll be playing those tomorrow, which will be slightly less exciting.
Without Foxdrop.
I won't be here. So hopefully there'll only be 1 or 2 games, because, you know, that's when the exciting people are around, and all the boring people will be there tomorrow.
Yeah, perfect scenario would be if we get a tiebreaker for that semi-final bye. So for second place, that would be the hypest ones. But there also will be no tiebreakers games played between the bottom 4 teams, because that seeding, of course, doesn't matter. And we'll keep you updated on the scenarios as the day goes on. And then after our last game, whenever it may be, we will discuss the playoff bracket in the EU LCS post-game lobby. We also want you to send in your playoff predictions using the hashtag #PingTheLobby, and we'll check in with them at the end of the day. Now, let's check out what we've got in store for our final day of the regular season. As said, it's kind of a game of dominoes. When one game goes a certain way, that influences everything else. And in that, if H2K pull off the upset, everything's going crazy.
Oh, it definitely will result in a lot of crazy situations that could happen throughout the day, but that all depends on if H2K can make that upset happen. Fnatic versus UOL is another big one. Fnatic could solidify themselves in first place if they find that win, but the Unicorns obviously want to end on a high, and upsets do happen.
Upsets do happen. We'll see predictions. Maybe some crazy person said that the Unicorns of Love would win. I do want to talk about Vitality versus G2 as well. This could very well be a monumental game for the seedings, Fox.
Both these teams looking to get into that number 2 spot. And like I mentioned, very, very important stuff. And G2, Vitality, both of these teams specifically, stylistically, it's always exciting to watch these two because they have very different ways of playing. I personally think, not that my predictions ever come true. Maybe I shouldn't say it because I might jinx someone. I think G2's still got what it takes. I think that Jankos has not quite been on form, what we've seen of him, and I think he was known as a superstar jungler in EU. I think we can see the old Jankos coming back.
Versus Kikis.
Well, that is also true, though, right? That's what's so exciting. Kikis, he's an absolute monster.
I love the fact that we are seeing some new champions come back in for Kikis. Things like the Olaf was a big pick for him. He had a great early game performance yesterday, and I think that's going to be integral going up against G2, who are kind of, for me, the big favorites in this matchup. I think Perks has really been on form. They have been playing a little bit more of a slower style early game, but going up against Vitality, how those two styles will clash will certainly be exciting to see.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yesterday, Vitality had a humongous game. Attila popped absolutely off on that Draven. And it's always a question, if Vitality doesn't get that early lead, where do they go from there?
Yeah, exactly that, because they are a team that's kind of linear in how they play. Yesterday, they even drafted themselves a 1-3-1 comp, and they still look to group up mid and try to force a lot of these fights in. While it did work against Misfits, I don't know if you can rely on that kind of play style going up against G2, because we have seen over the last few weeks, they've been bouncing back pretty heavily. We've noticed that they're on 3-0 record right now. Jankos is looking a little more consistent. They seem to be a bit more of a well-oiled machine.
Ladies and gentlemen, look, I'm really enjoying and appreciating the content that you're doing. Listen, it is quick stats time, ladies and gentlemen, all right? This beautiful statistician has something to say. May I ask you to leave my set? Please step off, please step off. I'm gonna let you finish later. I'm gonna let you finish later. Ladies and gentlemen, it's quick stats time! Look, you guys at home, you all know how much I love my stats. Okay, I love it so much they even filmed me celebrating and studying stats on my phone. The regular season is drawing to a close, and it is time for some of the quickest records in the quick stats segment of the regular season. Let's start with the quickest first blood. I've made another table for you, which I'm hoping will come up soon, starting with Broxer. He managed to pick up the earliest first blood at 1 minute on the clock. The quickest game was Fnatic taking down Giants, 22 minutes, 38 seconds. The quickest level 6 was in the year of Nukeduck at 4 minutes, 49 seconds. And the quickest Baron belongs to Misfits at 20 minutes and 37 seconds, back from when they were a good team. Now, do any of you know how many elemental dragons have been killed this split? I do know. I've snuck in this next table. I was explicitly told not to do dragons because some naysayers over there say that it's not important. Anyways, Mountain 68, Cloud 63, Ocean 50, Infernal 48. I'm a bit disappointed Cloud didn't take the top RNG spot because it really would have been fun to rub that into Deficio's face. Now, the real reason I'm here, as it is the last day of the split, and I have something very special to show you. Some of you may have noticed the quiver on my back, and I'm sure many questions have arisen. Now, before I ruin the surprise, please let me introduce to you the innovative, the improved, the in-depth, interesting foldy sheet. Right, didn't quite have the impact I was hoping for, but let me quickly tell you. The folder sheet is the most up-to-date, most accurate tool that accurately covers teams' final standings based on today's results. All of the 32 potential scenarios that could happen today are documented on this sheet, and we could have up to 5 potential tiebreaker games. Now, let me demonstrate how this works. I need a minion. Minion! Minion, come here. Come here.
Stop calling me Minion, Quickshot.
Right, now, this isn't difficult. If Vedius can do it, you can do it at home.
What's that supposed to mean?
Right, Vedius, the way this works, we have all 32 scenarios. You start on the left-hand side with game number 1, and you can see if Splice win, then we follow down this line. But if Giants win, we follow down these lines. So let's assume a team has won.
All right.
Which team has won the game?
I'll go with Splice. Let's start with Splice.
Now, this is a bit complicated, all right? You need to go to the back of the sheet and fold it in half.
Okay.
And there we go. Now we have only 16 scenarios
I'm
remaining.
pretty good at this.
It is. It's not bad. You see, Minion. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find your own foldy sheet over at eu.lolesports.com/foldy sheet.
Okay.
You've got a website?
Quick stats, compliments of the stats team.
Is that an actual link?
It is an actual link. It actually works. Go try it out. Get your own foldy sheet. Play along with us.
You know what? I'll allow it just because we do need information on tiebreakers. And if that link actually works, please spam Quickshot with what you think and how many tiebreakers and whatnot.
It.
I'm glad you're doing better, by the way. You look not as bad as last time.
I got some sleep.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, in the end, this was pretty educational. I'm
Sure.
Yeah, I was
Let's
a bit
call it
skeptical
that.
coming into that, but I liked it. Well, cool. We now know what is up, and we will update you on tiebreaker scenarios. But as we've been doing throughout the split, we're also going to check in with some of our European leagues. In this case, the Czech League of Hit Point Masters. Now, up to this point, there are 6 teams playing a best-of-3 round robin, and the finals will be with the top 4 teams. They are right around the corner. Let's take a look at what's going on there right now. Currently, we see Majestic Lions are doing very well in a first-place team, and it's kind of the surprise of the split with some rookie bottom lane players who are really showing everyone up.
Yeah, it was a big surprise for the league because they were kind of no names. People don't really expecting a lot from them, and then they end up with a 4-1 record so far during the regular season, looking like one of the big favorites to come out on top. But then for Esuba, this is kind of the other surprise because they were kind of the storied organization that we'd heard a lot about.
They're the Fnatic or G2 of Czechia.
Exactly that. Yeah. These guys have 6 titles in their last 10 seasons. So they're quite a decorated organization, and right now they still have a good record, but everyone was kind of expecting them to be this top dog, and so far this split, they haven't had the same level of performance that many expected them to have.
Can I just say, this logo from the Majestic Lions
is great.
Is that not the most beautiful thing you've seen in your life?
That is fantastic.
Look at that mane. That is a mane in every sense of the word.
That does look fantastic. I do also want to talk about, excuse me, in anything I'll pronounce in the next minute, it's very difficult. Team Furka or Fursa, I'm not exactly sure. But this is a very interesting team as well that is thrown together of some all-star players and some very popular players, of which their top laner, Odstranovac, I think, with some really perfect cannon plays amongst other things. We're going to take a look at a highlight. Interesting. There he goes.
It's a beautiful scenario. Look at that, where you get the 5-man flank on the cannon ultimate. That is just spicy. There's nothing else you're looking for. When you pick this champion, when you pick cannon, that is it. That is your dream. That is your dream. You're looking for that scenario, and he gets it. Oh, man, it's just so clean. I love it.
Great stuff.
It's great to see as well, you know, we talk a lot about all the different regions that we have here in Europe, all of them trying to compete towards that big EU Masters that is coming in straight after the gauntlet, and seeing this level of play within each of the regional leagues, you want to go check it out. It's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, in terms of EU Masters on the 26th of August in Svitavi, the offline finals will be with top 4 teams from the league, and the winning team goes to EU Masters. You can find all the information and learn more about Hitpoint Masters at nobody says it anymore, hitpoint.cz. There you go. Definitely go check that out. And as we close out the regular season over here in Berlin, there is still a very important question left to be decided. Who is the summer split MVP? Since we are looking for our MVP and we'll all be voting soon, we thought to check in with our player of the game leaderboards. This is the player that you guys vote for every game on Twitter, which should give us a good indication of who we need to look at. Now, first place, no surprise to anyone, it's Mr. Caps himself.
I think that actually doesn't give us a good indication because Caps is only ahead by 1 point. If this was a clear indication, he'd be ahead by about 30,000 points. But either way, we'll go with Caps right at number 1. I actually look a bit further down at Hans Sommer personally. Not to say that he would be the MVP. I think he's kind of fallen off a little bit. But that, to me, really tells the story of Misfits. How they were so good at the beginning of the split. Ridiculously good that Hans Sommer racked up 5 MVP points. When you consider their recent form, they won in 6, I believe, in their last 7 games or something like that. Just
that's a great point.
Ridiculous that he's up there in the first
Now, the thing with the player of the game leaderboards is that it's going to be very hard for someone like Broxa to get the award whenever Caps, or Reckless maybe by extension, is on that, and that's the same as often happened for Misfits. Mickey X said, well, I played well, but I don't get voted in because the AD carry always gets voted in. So I think we need to think of some more people outside of these categories? Because these will always be also the hot shots on the team, right?
I think it's one of those hotly debated topics with regards to MVP. We've already seen a few pros vocalize their opinions on the MVP, and it's just a matter of what your approach is to it. Do you consider the best player on the team who eventually results in them succeeding so well in the league, or do you put the onus on the person that if you remove them from that team, would that team still function in the same way? And for me, I always look at it as if you removed a certain player, would this team still function the same way? And when I look at Caps and I look at Fnatic, I think if you took him out, yes, Fnatic would still be a good team. But if you put Caps in a different team, let's just say you swap him with Exile and the Unicorns of Love, I think the Unicorns of Love are now competing for a top spot in Europe. That is the kind of value I think this guy brings to a team, not only due to his individual mechanical prowess, but when he gets very few resources, he always has an opportunity to carry. And I think that is so valuable as a player. And you think about where he started, it's fantastic to see that growth.
Let me rephrase. Who comes the closest to Caps for MVP if we assume that he's just gonna win it anyway?
Well, for me, it would often be a player like Nukeduck or Perks. Two players that have been incredibly consistent in both their respective rosters. And again, if you remove them, like those teams would look very different. Think about what Perks started with at the beginning of the year. 4 brand new players on that G2 lineup, and he still took them to a final. And this split again, they're in contention for getting that bye once more.
Well, I want to hear a different name. Is there anyone?
Sure. Well, I think Young Buck on Twitter had a really good definition of what he
he's
would
not
say.
eligible for MVP.
No, that wasn't my suggestion. His suggestion of the definition of MVP is, if you're going to build a new team, what's the player you start with? And I think that would answer Cats. But to give you something a bit more spicy for your ready check here, I'm actually looking towards Kikis because if we're taking a percentage of games played to number of MVP votes, Kikis is probably way up there. Like he's got 5 MVP votes in like 4 games.
It makes me wonder if Kikis played the whole split, what it would have been. Definitely knowing that the dynamic on Vitality is that outside of Attila doing really well, it isn't like Jizuke was taking all the player of the game votes. And it's very interesting. It's very hard for junglers historically to get the MVP. Trick did it twice though, but since then, it's been very difficult, but he could be up there.
I definitely think Kikis has had a huge amount of impact on that Vitality squad. And when you think about value as well, you've also got to think of some of the other junglers in our league. Memento and Cold have been insanely pivotal in terms of their team's successes, right? Especially when you think like they are at the bottom of the standings. They won't be able to compete for playoffs. But when you think about those two teams, those are the players you immediately go for. So I think like when you consider MVP, we've had so many standout players so far in the EU LCS. And I'm really excited to see what our top 6 teams can bring coming into play.
Yeah, as a reminder, we will, of course, the broadcast team, stats, writers, journalists, as well as the teams will all be voting in one pool to go towards the MVP and the other categories, and the MVP will be crowned in Madrid like it has done in the last couple of years. We'll be looking forward to that one. But now for something entirely different, also kind of MVP performances in the EU LCS broadcast team. As you know, we run a pretty tight ship, except if Quicksats slips in. But sometimes things, they don't exactly go as planned. Here is our blooper reel for the summer split. Enjoy.
Oh yeah, sure you betcha. Fnatic versus G2, that's gonna be a real humdinger, that is.
Okay, don't do crazy eyes. That's enough of myself, don't do crazy eyes. Tooth and nail of fire and fury. So I'll talk about literally every role if you want me to talk about it. Other than top lane. Don't make me talk about top lane. Or jungle, actually. Just bottom side of the map.
Maxler has shown that he doesn't take any shit from anyone. Like, I don't want to say shit. How do you say that without saying shit? I don't want to be like the swear machine.
And you'll have the players to prove that. Now, I see some trolls behind you, so I want to know, G2 is about to play against Misfits in Match of the Week, so they're gonna lose. I want to do predictions.
Pew, 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 pew. My hair is fluffy today, my hair is fluffy today, my hair is fluffy today. I think that after the last few weeks, he hasn't really been a standout carry.
80. I keep doing that. You'll have so many farts of me. Everything says, oh, 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 that they're number one, they go, what did I want to say?
The reason you should watch Misfits versus G2 is because I've got this. A dramatic change.
English is very difficult, my friend.
Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, you good?
That was really good.
My favorite is Medic when he goes, the reason why I should watch Misfits vs. G2 is blank. Blank stare.
My hair isn't fluffy today, though. It makes me a little sad.
Vedius was moaning nonstop that he wasn't in the blooper reel enough.
I'm just saying, if you put more Vedius in anything, it's always going to be a better product.
Come on. Wow.
Great blooper reel, though. Absolutely loved it. It's great to see what our production team can throw together, and they always have eyes on us at all times.
This is creepy. They're always like, we do some crazy stuff as well. I'm actually very proud of myself that I haven't dropped the F or S.
Yeah, you've been very good.
At all. Yeah. I think I just get it out of my system, you know, in these videos and in the outtakes. So, yeah.
They have those beeps ready for you, though.
They do.
I think that's the first word I said.
Just kidding. Alrighty. Well, bloopers, fun in all games, but there is a more intense, important thing going on right now. In the predictions, we are looking for the superior analyst. Hashtag superior analyst between Deficio and Vedius. As you all remember, it was a big deal in spring as well. And currently, Vedius is on 63 points. Are you still tied with Deficio?
So Deficio is currently sitting on 64.
Right.
And I was a little ambitious today because while the playoffs do count towards the final superior analyst, but yes. Deficio and I wanted to win the regular season. So I took a couple of gambles on my prediction because I thought he was going to predict G2 in the final game. That's what I thought. So I considered Roccat were able to upset Misfits because last split, the final game of the regular season between Misfits and Roccat nearly perfect gamed Misfits.
Is this in current climate an upset though?
Yeah. I would still argue that it is, but you're right. You're right. Misfits right now are not in good shape. But it turns out Deficio actually voted for Vitality. So we have two. One of us will win today. One of us has to win today.
I'm currently still battling the fans on Twitter, the fan vote, and they are ahead right now. So I took some risks now.
You're not last though, Foxdrop.
I'm not last anymore.
No.
This is the real story of the superior.
I think Pyra is last.
Pyra is last again.
His sworn enemy.
Somehow I'm not last anymore.
Things always change, but some things always remain the same. I just wanted to talk about why I picked what I picked.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to pick for the good of the show, right?
Right. Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, I was asked why, and I didn't have an answer. My answer is that I want to take the results that will be the most entertaining, will give us tiebreakers, all that stuff. So, unfortunately, if Sjokz wins, Fnatic is already first, so this won't really matter.
But that's part of your plan, right?
Unicorn, listen, if Sjokz wins versus H2K, Fnatic is already locked in first. Cap said that he may play Teemo. This game won't matter. He's going to play it. It's going to not win. And the Unicorns of Love will win and give the Unicorns
You have no faith in Teemo, Sjokz.
I love Teemo. I play it all the time. Well, okay, if I play, it's not very effective. Maybe if Caps plays it, it is.
But it's going to be an exciting day. A lot of us seem pretty confident on Splice, which I don't know about that either, largely because that game doesn't have a huge amount of implications on the standings. And both these teams looking to end, I think, with some fun. So I'm hoping we get to see some interesting champions, and it could go either way. So we have a lot of exciting matchups today.
Yes. Well, the fight for first is on. The fight for the bye is on. Unfortunately, our very first game of the day has no implications for neither. Splice is up versus Giants. Giants is out of the playoff race, but I did want to take a minute to talk about their summer split. We were speaking of their miracle run just a couple of weeks ago, but they couldn't make playoffs, and this is their final EU LCS game in 2018. I'd want to go out with a bang if I was Giants, but if we look at the whole season, in the end, it just didn't come together consistently enough for them to do anything, which is the sad.
They were really mired in the early part of the season. I think that was the miracle run. I was a believer. Nuke that was a believer when he was here on PGO as well. They really showed some really good stuff as the split went on. And Joko specifically is someone who I have my eyes on because he's actually been one of the league's best early game junglers, and that's been how Giants have won their games. You get them ahead in the early game. They oh, look at that pose. That is intimidating.
I'm glad this is the last time we show this picture, by the way.
Well, I like it. It's, I mean,
he's not joking around.
Not joking around. That is definitely something that we have not made a pun of before. Yeah, he sees it. He gets it. He's had enough. Sjokz has had enough as well. We've all had enough.
On that point, we think back to yesterday's game versus G2, and in the early game, that was a very tense game. We saw a lot of early game impact from this jungler, picking up the Olaf, finding multiple early skirmishes, getting a lot of kills under the Giants' belt, and things looked pretty promising for them. So if the teams look to have a little bit of fun today, if we see a lot of early game skirmishing, this is the man you're kind of looking at, and it's great to see that throughout the year, he has been able to show that he is a good jungler, especially in these early
He has
grown
and he has stepped up.
And a sub and a suit? Is that a roster lock we've not... Betsy's out, Kuz is in.
He tried to make badges, posters late game, Kim. He didn't get enough people on the bandwagon, so now he's just putting himself in front of the camera, apparently. What's going on? Secondly, I want to talk about Giants' opponents. Splice are also locked in 6th place, so they are in playoffs, but they can't get that 5th place anymore. And even though they might not take this game too seriously, I do want to look at Splice in the context of, well, they're playing their quarterfinal next week. What issues do you think they need to fix, or where is room for opportunity? Let's put it in a more positive manner.
Well, we just spoke about Joker and how he's one of the best early game junglers in Europe. For me, that is what Splice would like to get a little bit more of, is that early game jungle pressure. And from Sjokz specifically, we know he can deliver, because when he was on UOL, he was a really blooming good jungler, ridiculously good jungler. Hence, he got picked up by Splice. And I think we've yet to see Xerxes do Xerxes things, at least in my eyes. And so if he can get the ball rolling a bit more early game, get Splice not to be like the 40-minute team that they are.
But is it not that, like, Xerxes had some really ups and not downs even, just like sometimes he went above and beyond. I distinctly remember a couple of weeks earlier in the split that we were talking about possibly even the best jungler at that moment. So what's going on there?
I think it's just one of those things where when we look at them coming into playoffs, that's the kind of thing we want to see more of, because Xerxes has been quite inconsistent, and I think you're right. He's not known for his early game impact, especially over the last few weeks, but that is an area that they could look to improve, especially when you think that the 3rd place team that they're likely going up against right now, G2, Vitality, Schalke, one of these 3 teams, you need to be able to have a strong early game impact around. And while I think that's important, they can do it by playing through their mid laner. For me, Nisqy has been the most consistent player on this team. Whether it be on Orianna, whether it be on Zoe, this man has gone from last splits, a 3rd place match where he had a phenomenal performance on Cassiopeia, to being a stalwart mid laner in the EU LCS. He doesn't lose lane, he isn't ever a detriment to his team, and I think that if they just enabled him a little bit more in the early game, set him up to be a big carry, I think this man has a lot of potential, and I think you need to be a big carry threat in the mid, especially, again, you think about some of the other mid laners you're going up against in play.
Yeah, and I think if they do that, they can have the full package, because they can then shore up their early game, and they already have the fact that Kabi is really reliable in the late game. Nisqy is also very reliable in the late game, and Kasing can pull out the move. So they could have the full package. I just wonder if it will all come together in time. And this is kind of a last chance saloon. If they want to get to Worlds, you want to end as high as possible in the playoffs. If you win the summer split, you're already in Worlds. But I don't know if that's something we want to put on Splice.
Exactly that. And I think Deficio made a great point earlier in the week, which was very much that a lot of these teams were built to qualify for that World Championship. And for Splice to not be able to make it would be a huge disappointment for the organization and the players as well. So while today we don't necessarily need to see a lot of improvement, coming into that quarterfinal, showing something against teams that have consistently knocked them out of playoffs in the past, they want to demonstrate that they can make it to the top, make it to Madrid, and secure a top spot.
I think momentum is still important, though. If you've gone into playoffs losing to Giants, that could have it might not be easy to reset.
It depends what they draft.
Of course. If they don't take the game as seriously, then that's fine.
Peter Dunn does take things pretty
seriously.
He
often does, yeah.
Right.
But I mean, the players, they're probably like, okay, why would I have to try really hard if I can just play around?
But if they do try and they still can't win, that's what I'm talking about, you know?
That's very fair. And I agree with you. I think momentum is big. Giants sitting at the bottom of the standings, you don't want to lose towards them, but I'm excited to see what we bring out today. I think it's that big debate between, do you want more on-stage experience or do you want your team to be in a positive mindset ending the regular season, right? What do you find more important? And for me, it would be about ending on a high, having some fun, and even if you lose, you won't feel bad about it afterwards.
Yeah, we will definitely see ending on a high for both teams. It is time to jump into the final day of the regular season. Let's head over to our casters.
Thank you.